I think this is literally the most important topic in finance. I've realized too that most people who make bad decisions, the vast majority of them, not all of them, but the vast majority of them really thought in their heart that they were doing the right thing at that time. People are very good at self-justification of their own behaviors. There was a period when I was pretty judgmental over how other people spent their money and criticizing their decisions of how they made their money, saved their money, invested their money. Signaling is a huge thing. Signaling to other people your own values. And then the question of what do you want to signal and who do you want to signal it to? But the other side that is just as important is managing your expectations. It's having the sense of appreciating what you have now and realizing that more money is not going to solve all of your problems. It might solve some, it's not going to solve all of your problems. That's just as important. I'm not saving for a new house. I'm not saving for a new car. I'm saving for the ability to wake up every morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. So much of our lack of creativity, of our anger, of our meanness comes from not having independence and the anxiety that can instill in your life.
$1 million question. When I get that amount, I'll be good. Life will be happy. Everything will be okay.
The reason that you and I and almost everybody wakes up in the morning and says, I want more. My happiness is over there, as you just framed it. That is the driver of all progress. I still want more, but I don't want the pursuit of more to define who I am. But I think money is very uncertain for people. It's obvious that there's a million different directions you can go, that there is no formula for how to do it. And I think most people don't really understand who they are. Until you know who you are, you can't know what you want.
Morgan Housel is a New York Times bestselling author, investor, and one of the most influential voices in modern finance. His books, The Psychology of Money, Same as Ever, and The Art of Spending have sold millions of copies worldwide, and his work focuses not on spreadsheets and stock picks, but on the psychology behind how we think, spend, save, and measure success. In this episode, we unpack money value systems, why saving is really buying independence, how spending signals identity, and what it actually takes to live a financially meaningful life in a world obsessed with more. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Not Just Money podcast by Hantech Markets. Guys, today we have a banger of a guest on the show, someone I'm such a big fan of as well. I've read his books. He's probably one of the most famous and most influential people when it comes to the finance space. His book has sold millions of copies, and today we're going to deep dive into finance, the psychology of it, literacy. But please welcome to the show, everyone, Mr. Morgan Housel. Morgan, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here.
The pleasure is all mine, my man. So as we were just talking, off camera, I'm a big fan. Followed your book, Psychology of Money as well. Gave me a whole new perspective. And I thought, you know what? Let's start the conversation there. So one of the biggest takeaways for me personally, Morgan, from Psychology of Money was everyone has different value systems. So, sometimes someone might spend on like a chair, like $10,000 on a chair. And you're like, oh my God, that's crazy. Why would you do that? But then maybe I just spent, for example, like $5,000, for example, on like pots and pans, and people are like, oh my God, Khalid, you're crazy, and so on. So it was a big wake-up call to understand that we all have different value systems, right? But my question to you is, to kick us off, why do we typically impose our money mind frame and mindset when it comes to value on other people? Because I think that's something we subconsciously do all the time.
Yeah, very good question. I think that is why I started thinking about this topic of our different values and different beliefs, because there was a period of my life, I think I have evolved from this now, but there was a period when I was pretty judgmental over how other people spent their money and criticizing their decisions of how they made their money, saved their money, invested their money. And I think inherent in that was my naive young view of the way that I do it must be right. Therefore, if you do it differently, by definition, you're wrong. That was my very stupid, naive view. And I think part of that, why I believed that, was two reasons. One, I really viewed that money was a scientific endeavor, like this was math or chemistry. And in math, there is only one right answer for everybody. It doesn't matter where you're from or how old you are or what gender you are. 2 + 2 = 4. The other, I think this was more important. This is a little bit of a deeper answer, but I think money is very uncertain for people. It's obvious that there's a million different directions you can go, that there is no formula for how to do it. And therefore, when you deal with that uncertainty, you really want to believe that the way you're doing it is right, because the consequences for being wrong can be catastrophic. So you want to deeply in your heart believe that the way I do it is correct. And therefore, if I see you doing it differently, I almost view it as a threat, because deep down, I'm like, maybe he's right. Maybe I'm doing it wrong and maybe he's right. And then I start freaking out. And you manifest that by judging other people with a sense of cynicism over it.
Mm.
And so I think getting over that point, I think this is literally the most important topic in finance, is the idea that there's not one right way to do it. I know people who have made financial decisions that would cause me to never sleep at night. I would be beside myself with worry and anxiety and doubt, but it's right for them. And what's interesting in The Psychology of Money, near the end, one of the last chapters, I laid out in pretty good detail how my wife and I manage and spend our own money personally. And I was pretty open with it. And there was times when I was like, I don't know if I should reveal this much, but I'm just gonna do it. Let's just go for it. And I think it's very interesting. It's not surprising to me anymore, but it's interesting how many people would email me and say, why are you so stupid for doing X, Y, and Z? I can't believe you spend your money that way and save your money this. Why don't you do it differently? And I think, like, literally the first chapter of the book is everybody's different. Leave it to them. And then the last chapter, I say, here's how I do it. And they're like, well, why aren't you doing it like me? So I think it's a very profound and common trap that we all fall for.
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting answer, Morgan. And I never looked at it from the threat perspective, right? In the sense of, oh, maybe he's doing something right and I'm doing something wrong. And to your point, you've been writing about finance now for 20 years, between Psychology of Money, this Save Easy, and The Art of Spending. What I took when I look at those three books is they almost seem like snapshots of your life and who you were at that times and where you were at that times, not only from a financial perspective, but on a personal perspective. And one thing you really touched on which was surprising to me, is that when you're younger, the concept of status is something important to us, but we don't have the intelligence to offset that. So we naturally typically fall into these things. So I'd love to hear from you, if you're looking at the journey of those books, I guess, what's your inspiration for writing those books at each time, and what was going on in your life to create this overarching, I guess, wholesome financial, I'd say, Bible in a way?
It's such a good question, one that I don't think anyone's asked me before, but I have thought about this. This just happened a couple weeks ago. This is a pretty recent thing, so it's very timely that you asked. When I was probably 25, I wrote a couple of ebooks. Now, the word book is carrying a lot of weight there. They were this very long PDFs that I published on Amazon. Let's call them that. I was pretty proud of them. I think they were pretty good, but I wrote them when I was quite young and early in my writing journey. And I went back just 2 weeks ago to read some of the reviews on Goodreads, which is not something I usually do. I leave the reviews to other people and I don't wade in there, but I'm curious. These books that I wrote 15 years ago, let's go back and see what people are saying about it. And there was one review that was pretty recently. It was a review left in the last year, and I loved it. I just read it and I went, oh, that hit me right in the heart in a good way. And the review was, when you read Morgan Housel's stuff from way back when, he clearly has a chip on his shoulder. And he's taking a lot of people to task, and he's criticizing a lot of people in a way that he doesn't anymore. And I had never put that together, but I was like, yes, I think that's it. And similar to what we just said in the first question, I was scared back then. I was young and naive, and I didn't know who I was. And I had a lot of uncertainty about my own career and my own life. And I think that manifests in me judging other people, because it made me feel good. It made me feel good about my decisions if I could look at other people and say, you're doing it wrong. Because almost by default, if you're doing it wrong, I'm doing it right. And it made me feel, but all of that was just, I think at the core was the idea that deep down, I knew that I had no idea what I was doing. And I knew that my future was very uncertain. And so to answer your question, like about the trajectory of it, I've just gotten I've gotten calmer. I've gotten equal parts more confident and more attuned to the idea that nobody knows what's going to happen next. No, those are like opposites. So I think I'm more confident in the idea that nobody knows what's going to happen next, and therefore the pursuit of some kind of formula and grand map is kind of futile. And within that too, I've realized too that most people who make bad decisions, the vast majority of them, not all of them, but the vast majority of them really thought in their heart that they were doing the right thing at that time. What does it feel like when you're making a bad decision? Most of the time it feels great. it feels amazing. Because the core of a lot of bad decisions are you are robbing pleasure from your future self and pulling it forward. And so when you pull that pleasure forward, it feels amazing right now. It feels amazing today, even if you're going to regret it in the future. But that's just given me more empathy for people who make decisions that they end up regretting. I'm like, look, you're probably not a bad person. You probably didn't do anything stupid.
True.
It felt really good at the time, and I understand how that happens. So I think I've become a little bit more forgiving, both to myself and others over time.
That's such an important point that you touched on, Morgan. And it's something I've been thinking about as well, in the sense of when it comes to spending, right? To your point, in hindsight, it might look like a wrong financial decision, but in the moment, you do it for a reason, whether it's logic, whether it's emotion. And you talk about how I think one of the toughest things, though, to build on your point is that acceptance, to accept that, what, at the time, I made that decision for this reason. For example, I spent let's say $10K on buying a camera or something. And then in hindsight, down the line, you're like, oh my God, why did I spend that much on that? But it's accepting that at the time, why you made that decision, whether it was a logical decision or whether it was an emotional decision. And I think the toughest thing is accepting that, whether it was right or wrong, accepting that you did it and being comfortable with it. I think that's what a big challenge is for people.
Yeah. There's this great quote from the historian Will Durant where he says, learn enough from history to accept one another's delusions. And, they're delusions, but we have to accept them. I believe things about the world that I know you would disagree with, and probably vice versa. And I think there's an important thing where rather than arguing with each other and debating each other, it's okay to just say, look, we're different people from different countries. We've seen a different side of the world. I've seen things you haven't. You have seen things I haven't. That has led us to believe these things. And we need to respect each other for each other's delusions that we all have, all of us have. I use this story near the end of The Psychology of Money. It was an amazing thing that I read many, many years ago. It was an article of a mother, I think in Somalia. I may be getting that wrong, but some African country. No, I'm sorry. It was Yemen. It was in Yemen, and there was a practice in Yemen where when your child was sick, you would take a burning stick and shove it through the child's chest, like boring a hole in your child's chest.
Wow.
And of course, that seems absurd to me. And I think most people are, why in the world would you do that? You're torturing your sick child and it's not going to make them better, clearly. And the mother had a quote in the article, the mother who was doing this. She said, when your child is sick and you have no money, you will believe anything. And that was one of those things where instantly at the beginning of the article, I'm like, you monster, like hurting. And then at the end, I'm like, I kind of get it. You'll believe anything, won't you? And I think
100%.
that's a very extreme example. But people who are in financial stress, who have financial uncertainty, who have doubt about their careers, will also believe nearly anything about what they should do and how good they are. Like, people are very good at self-justification of their own behaviors. That's for everybody, me, you, everybody. We can justify the good, the crazy, everything in between. And part of the reason that it's so easy to judge other people is that when I look at you, and let's say the financial decisions that you've made or anyone has made, I just see the outcome. But in your head, you know all the mental gymnastics and the justifications that you went through to get there. I don't. And so it's easy for me to look at it and be like, that was bad. That was a bad decision. You're an idiot. You made a mistake. But in your head, you're like, yeah, but I did it because of this, and I felt this way, and I was trying to impress this person. And in that context, decisions that look crazy to me make perfect sense to you.
It's so funny you bring that up. So I had a guest on my show earlier today, and we were talking about how you never know what's going on in other people's lives. And, to your point, like, what's crazy to you, like, that story is like, oh my God, it's crazy, until you get that last little bit of context that makes you go like, okay, I kind of, understand where that's coming from. And touching on this, you said something about in the interview with Stephen, you were talking about signaling. And I think this is kind of what you're alluding to, in this way when it comes to spending. Now, I have learned the hard way, and from many people I've spoken to, that a high income does not equal more wealth. If you want to be wealthy, you got to either sacrifice less, to your point, or want less, or sacrifice more. Now, the biggest challenge, and you touched on it earlier in the conversation, Morgan, when it comes to the psychology of it and the judgment, is when we're spending, we're sending that signal, and we can't control how other people are going to judge us. But what's more interesting to me is the deeper context, the psychological context it is that you've touched on, is why am I giving out this signal? Is it, for status? Is it to genuinely improve my life? Is it because I'm being influenced by other people? So finance and managing your money mindset, the way what I would call it, is so difficult because we are bombarded left and right with do this, do that, trade this, do that. So how do I build, I guess, a strong or healthy, let's say healthy, mental money mindset foundation to understand how I'm moving and how to make better decisions?
I think one of the parts of this that you brought up is that signaling is a huge thing. Signaling to other people your own values, and then the question of what do you want to signal and who do you want to signal it to. And so when I think about my own life, there are a small handful of people in my life who I desperately want to love and admire me. My wife, my kids, my parents, a couple of my friends. And I really, really want their love. It's hard for me to imagine having a good life without their love and admiration and respect. So there's that. And then there is a smaller group of people who are kind of like associates in my life. They're just kind of like, they're not my core group of best friends, but they're there. And then there is everybody else, the entire broader world. And signaling to each of those groups is going to be very different. And so does my daughter care how many horsepower my car has? No, of course not. She cares that I'm there for her and I play with her and I listen to her and I love her and I protect her. That's what she cares about. That's what she's going to love me for. So my ability to signal to her is not my car. It's paying attention. My friends, kind of the close associates around me, do they care how much money I have? Maybe to a very small degree, but really I think what they're going to admire, what I will admire for other people in that group is, are you helpful? Are you funny? Are you smart? Are you consistent? Are you loyal? Like that, those kind of traits. And then for the broader group, it's not that I don't care about other people, but the traits that I want them to admire me for are going to decline quite a bit from there. So, I'm an author. So do I want the broader world to think of me as a good writer, as a good storyteller? Kind of. I think there is some truth to that, of course.
That's fair to say. Yeah, for sure.
That says, I've always been the person that says, I want to write books for myself. And I do write books for myself. I don't write them for other people. I write them for me. But of course, there's a part of me that wants other people to look at me as a talented writer, but as a talented writer, not as someone who's made this much money or who lives in a house that looks like this, that I could not care less about. And so who you're signaling to is going to change. And the reason you're signaling to them changes as you spread out from your core group of friends and family.
That's such an interesting way to look at it, because when you said, the example you gave about your daughter, about, she's not going to care how much horsepower I have, but she's going to care about how much attention I'm giving her and love and all that. So there's almost like a currency signal, to each group. I want to present a different coin. In this one, it's love. In this one, it's being an author. In this one, it's that. And I'm so happy you brought kids up, because the last guest we had on our podcast, Morgan, we were talking about financial literacy. It's a massive topic right now. You're better than anyone, have written about it, know about it, understand it. She told me that financial literacy starts at home, and that's where your money mindset, gets developed. But what you said on your on the podcast was that you can't enforce your values on kids, right? You have to lead by example, and then they will kind of pick up, right? So let's look at it from a financial literacy standpoint. What is the example or habits that you live by so that your kids take on those values and will have let's say, maybe a deeper appreciation for money and how to use it and how to build long-term wealth? Because like you said, you can't force it down, but you can live in that way and they're going to pick up on that.
I would start with a little humility and say, I don't know if I've done a perfect job at this. I'm still learning as I go. My kids are 6 and 10, so they're not babies, but they're not old yet. And then so I'm still trying to figure it out. And there have been times that my wife and I have recognized behaviors in our children where we think, oh, they're acting spoiled right now. And in those moments, I'm like, that's on me. That's on me. It's very difficult for a parent to want to use your resources to better your children. Everybody wants to do that, while also keeping them grounded in some sense of normalcy and to appreciate things around them. And so I guess this might sound like a cop out to the question, but I haven't changed anything about my behavior in order to think that I'm being a good role model to them. I've always been a big saver. My wife and I have always saved the majority of what we've earned. But things in our life have changed over the last 5 years or so, and we spend a little bit more money, and we worry that will rub off on our children. I think more than what we're teaching them right now, it's going to be how will we deal with them when they are young adults in terms of the financial support that we provide to them. Because this is another area where it's like, I want to help our children out as much as we can. And also, I know that in my own life, when I was, 18 years old, 25 years old, what gave me good financial traits and good financial habits was, yes, what my parents taught me and showed me, but it was also what they did not provide me. The fact that I was fully financially independent when I was 17 or so, and I was like, I got to go figure this out and make this work. Otherwise, it's going to be nasty next month. I got to figure this out for myself, and that pressure is what led me to do it. And so, I actually don't talk with my kids that much about money. They know
Okay.
they're very aware of how much things cost, the things that they want. They know how much it costs. I do think they have an inflated sense of money in terms of, sometimes they'll make comments like it only costs $50. And I'm like, do you know how much money $50 is? That's not a small amount of money.
Yeah,
Like
true.
wait until you're earning $7 an hour and you'll realize how much $50 is. You will. And so it's a difficult thing. I think here's what's important. Something I do think a lot about. I think a lot of parenting mistakes, and I'm not a parenting expert by any means, but a lot of parenting mistakes come from when a parent says, I need to basically download my brain into the child and teach you what I know. But the truth is, the child is a different person than you. They are not you. They might not want what you want. They might have a very different risk tolerance than you do. And so I want to lead by example with what I think are good traits, but also let my children become who they are. It's possible that my son, for example, will have a much higher risk tolerance than I do right now. And therefore, if I sit him down and say, this is how I invest, and that's the right way to do it, it might not be right for him. Maybe they'll have a lower risk tolerance than I do. So it's equal parts leading by example and letting them become the people who they are without forcing myself onto them.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate the honesty and the humility about their ages, because obviously as they grow older, these conversations are going to start popping up a lot more, and they're going to start understanding when they go to college what they have to do. And I love the $50 example you gave. Like, you have no idea what we used to do just to get that $50, man.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So for you to be financially independent since 17, like I can't even imagine the jobs you did and everything you did to get to the point you are now. You mentioned something, Morgan, on the podcast that blew my mind when it comes to saving. You said saving is me buying my independence. And I was like, huh? Like, I don't get that. Usually saving is like, I never looked at saving as a tool for freedom. I always looked at it as like defend for like a bad day or whatever. So my question to you is, because I believe most people don't approach saving from that mindset. Where's the disconnect we have, for example, for where you see it and how, for example, a general person like me would see it?
Yeah, it's not a big disconnect. I don't think. It's just a reframing of what the purpose of savings is. And the traditional view is that you save money in order to purchase something in the future. It's delayed gratification. I'm going to save money today so that I can buy a new car next year, for example. And that's not wrong. That's not bad. That could be a great thing. I've always been a big saver since I first started earning money when I was a teenager. And back then, I really viewed the reason I was saving is because I was terrified. I really didn't have a lot of confidence in my job skills. I always felt like the shoe was about to drop and I was going to lose my job and be forced back to some level of destitution. That was my fear, my ever-present fear. And so I saved a lot of money. And I didn't think this back then, but looking back, I'm like, no, the reason I was saving is because I desperately wanted to be independent. The idea of losing my job and being forced out of my apartment or whatever it would be terrified me, absolutely terrified me. And so I wanted independence. I wanted savings so that in my mind, when, not if, but when I lost my job, nobody would force my hand of telling me where I could live and what I could do and who I could hang out with, whatnot. I wanted to do it on my own terms, and so I was saving for that. And I've been doing that, since I was a teenager. I'm still doing that today. I save the vast majority of what I earn because I want independence. I'm not saving for a new house. I'm not saving for a new car. I'm saving for the ability to wake up every morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. And that was what I was doing when I was 17 and made no money. And it's what I'm doing today as well. And so I don't view it as I view it as when I save money, I'm purchasing independence. I'm not saving money, I'm buying independence. And that is not delayed gratification. I get pleasure from that today. I can wake up this morning with a sense of calm and ease to be like, I'm financially independent. And by the way, I was doing that when I was 18 and had just a couple $1,000 saved up, because I knew that if I lost my job, I would not be forced out of my apartment. And that gave me calm back then. And it gives me calm today. I benefit from that right now. It's not delayed. And so I've always been of that mindset that the purpose of money is to provide independence. I think everybody, every single person, if they can achieve some level of independence in their life, will realize that they are more creative than they thought. They can be happier than they imagined. They can be a better person than they imagined. They can be a nicer person than they imagined if they're independent. And so much of our lack of creativity, of our anger, of our meanness comes from not having independence and the anxiety that can instill in your life.
Man, you really hit the nail on the head with that, in the sense of, I love what you talked about, that a lot of people don't realize their talents. I've had so many conversations recently, and I've become more aware that we all have a talent. We just have to figure it out, but it's not out there. It's actually, in here to that point. And second of all, I understand when you were younger that it came from a place of fear, right? And it makes, perfect sense. Even when I was younger, I had so much anxiety, when it came to like money and finances and how to work. I even studied finance, and I still wouldn't consider myself financially literate, for the record. But you touched on something there. You're like, okay, I'm still saving today. And this kind of leads me on to the $1 million question. When I get that amount, I'll be good, life will be happy, everything will be okay. So it's interesting because usually people are saying that to chase more money. But in your case, what's interesting, the fact that you're still saving, is that you're doing it in a saving manner, at least from my perspective. So I'd love to understand, get a deeper context of how do we break that? Because even, I'll be very honest, I'm in that boat too right now. I have a business, it's going well, but I'm still like, it's over there. My comfort is over there, my happiness is over there. So help me, how do we break this?
I think there's something that might be a little disappointing about this answer, but I actually think it is the core of what is so much of good in society. The reason that you and I and almost everybody wakes up in the morning and says, I want more. My happiness is over there, as you just framed it. That is the driver of all progress. That is the reason that we have amazing technology and amazing medicine and have made so much progress in the world over the last several hundred years, is because most people wake up every morning and say, more. I need more. That's what drives people to innovate and figure out problems. So that's amazing. I want to live in a world where the vast majority of people wake up every morning and say, this is not enough, because that's going to be the world that's going to cause our kids and our grandkids to, not have to worry about cancer or whatever it would be, because we've innovated and figured these things out, because people wake up and they want more. And so part of this is realizing that the thirst for more is not a bad thing. And that's true in your individual life as well. I've been thirsty for a lot of my career. I want to be a good writer. I want to be a good storyteller. I want to figure this out. I have to figure out how to piece these paragraphs together in a way that's going to catch people's attention. Like that's wanting more too. But I really enjoy doing it and whatnot. And so the idea of having enough money is core, but I want more money. And that's not a contradiction. I just think the entire financial industry is based off of getting more. How do you earn higher investing returns? How do you save more money? It's based off of building more money. Wonderful thing, not a bad thing. But the other side that is just as important is managing your expectations. It's having the sense of appreciating what you have now and realizing that more money is not going to solve all of your problems. It might solve some, it's not going to solve all of your problems. That's just as important. And this is true for everything from investing returns, where, look, when I invest my own money, I assume that the future returns will be pretty low. And that's not a forecast. I'm not a market forecaster, but I just assume they're going to be low. And if they're higher than that, amazing. That's awesome. But so many people get into trouble when they're like, I assume my portfolio is going to return 30% per year. And you're like, well, you're screwing yourself, because now if it's 28%, which is absolutely amazing, you feel terrible about it. And you're going to take more risk trying to make up for it. But if I assume my portfolio will return 5% per year, if it's 7, I'm like, hey, bonus. We all won here. This is great. And so that's expectations management. I still want more, but I don't want the pursuit of more to define who I am. I want, I want more of very specific things. Yes, I want more money, but I want to be a better dad. I want to be a better husband. I want more of that. I want to be a better writer. I want more of that. I want more calm in my own life. I want more of that. I'm going to chase that. So having enough, there's different aspects of it. A lot of it is about expectations management and perspective. Someone wrote a very good article this weekend where, in the United States and all over the world, there's this feeling, this narrative that a middle-class family cannot live like they used to. So the narrative in the United States is back in the 1950s and 1960s, you could have a single earning household, a husband who worked at the factory, a wife who stayed at home and raised 3 kids. And you could do that back then, and you can't do it anymore. That's the narrative. And someone wrote this article that said, look, you can still today, right now, live that life based off of 1960s standards. But nobody wants to do that anymore. Because the 1960s life was a 700 square foot house, no health insurance, no vacations, no air conditioning, no, nothing like that. And most people don't want that anymore. So part of this is appreciation for how far that we have come these days and how much better life is on average today than it was 50 years ago. And that helps you manage your expectations rather than constantly being driven by this pursuit of I need more. And if I earn more money, then I'll be happy. That's very often a mistake. That the reason that you feel like you need more is because you don't enjoy your work. Maybe you don't enjoy your relationships. And it's too easy to tell yourself, yeah, but if only I doubled my salary, then all those things would be better. And so money can give you a better life, but it's too easy to assume that it's going to be the key to all of your challenges.
Yeah. So like you amazingly said, money is an outcome-based thing, right? And I like that you came at it from a different point, that the strive for more is not a bad thing. That's how you got to where you are. That's how I got to where you are. That anxiety, that fear, that we want to do better, we want to sell more, whatever. So money is that forever carrot that keeps us going. I think the challenge is, and to your point, it's managing that so that I'm comfortable that I am pursuing this for this reason, but that shouldn't define my value as a person, my status as, a friend, a husband, a father, you know what I'm saying? But like we were talking earlier in our conversation, it's very easy for us to sit back and judge, be like, yeah, look at that guy. He doesn't have it. He's not doing well, because it's lazy, it's easy. And I'm so happy you brought up expectations. You said that expectations are what you want minus what you have. And that expectations are a debt that needs to be repaid. I really, really love that, because that's what it all comes down to. And I love how you look at investing in the sense of like, I'm going to assume I'm either not going to make money or it's going to be 5%. So anything above is a win. And learning, I think learning to manage that is a difficulty. And also, to build on your point, this is a question that I think you probably experienced in your life. So I'd love to get your thoughts on it. Are these genuinely my expectations of what I truly want? Or are these other people's and society's expectations of what I want and what I should have? And how do I make that distinction? Because I think that distinction understanding that is so important, because that's going to either take me left or it's going to take me right.
Yeah. I mean, I've had this experience in the last couple of years. I travel a lot for work, and there have been 2 cities that I had not been to before in the United States that I had very low expectations for, a very low view of. And those were Cincinnati and Louisville, Kentucky. Before I had gone there, I'm like, oh, these cities suck. because that's what I had heard. That's the narrative.
Exactly.
And so I
Yeah.
had very low expectations. And then I traveled to those cities, and both of them, the day that I got there, I left the airport and started driving around the city, and I was floored. I was like, this place is beautiful. This place is awesome. Not only that, like I would live here. This place is really, I can't believe it. And my expectations were so low that when you exceed your expectations, you're just blown away. It's amazing. And you can have the opposite. If you've never been to like Beverly Hills in Los Angeles, you know, that has a reputation for the nicest, wealthiest, ritziest, most amazing place in the world, maybe. And then if you actually go there, you're like, I don't know. It's okay. It's really not nothing special. The traffic's bad. A lot of the houses are actually pretty ugly. So like you've undershot your expectations, and then you just feel like you've been robbed. You feel so dejected about it. And so expectations management, you can really set yourself up for a lot of joy in life by keeping your expectations low, by aiming low. Now you also have to be ambitious at the same time. You have to like hold both those
Exactly.
at the same time.
Yeah.
But I wish that I went to more cities with low expectations, because I loved going to Cincinnati. I was like, this place is amazing. I'm so blown away by this. And so I want to have high expectations for my value as a parent, and my value as a writer. Like that I have very high expectations for. But I think just my daily walking around, living, the trips that I take and whatnot, I want to manage my expectations down, so I set myself up for pleasant surprises. I think that's always important.
No, and I think, like you said, I love that story of, you go to a city, you're like, oh, it's going to be bad, and then it's amazing, and, vice versa. That management of expectations, I think, is a lifelong game that we all play, and at different phases, our expectations are going to change, and we're going to have to adjust and do it in different ways. And one big thing that we've been hearing all about, and you guys touched on it on the podcast, this concept of passive income, and that it's a scam. Now, the reason I wanted to bring this up is because I'll be honest, in my mind, even I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to trade, dude. I'm going to make passive income. It's going to be, so easy. And I obviously, as I started trading and started learning the hard way, that some people say that in trading, it's 80% psychology and 20% skill. And it's all about, emotion and understanding, looking at the market from a lens of human psychology, not from a lens of, oh, has this stock gone up or has this stock, gone down? So, and that seems to be a big narrative these days, day trading. Yeah, day trade, I made $8,000 today. You can too, follow these strategies, blah, blah, blah. But what I learned from you is that there's almost no such thing. Or what are we getting wrong about this? Why has it become so popular today? And what are people missing with this passive income statement?
I think that, yeah, so the idea of why has it become so popular today, I think there's two reasons for it. One is just because we have access to it in ways that we didn't before. And so and on one hand, I don't think there's anything unique about today's culture, because if you had introduced Kalshi and Polymarket and Robinhood to young people in the 1970s, they would have become addicted to it as well. So there's nothing unique about today's generation other than we now have these tools that we didn't have before. There's something else to be said, though, that there's a big thing in psychology that says when you feel like all of your options are bad, you become very risk-seeking. If you look at if you look at your life and you're like, I have no legitimate opportunity to build a good life, then you are much more willing to be like, throw it all on black. Who cares? And so that's the downside of what we're seeing today, with the huge explosion in day trading, sports betting, gambling, prediction markets. All of that, I think, can be a symptom of particularly young people who view their path in life, their choices that are in front of them, the opportunities that they're in front of them for working and building a career, as limited. And so that's disappointing. That's dispiriting. Now, I think it's not uncommon for the older generation to always look at the younger generation with a sense of disappointment, and that was true when I was young, when you were young. And look, when I was a teenager, that was the day trading revolution of the 1990s, which was a fraction of what it is today. But it was the same narrative back then. These kids on their E-Trade accounts, day trading.com stocks, it was the same narrative as it is today. And like, by and large, we all ended up okay. And so I think in some ways it's been like this forever. Gambling has always been a very attractive thing. It's just how our minds are wired to think that we can get ahead and be attracted to a very easy, painless, risk-free payoff is a very attractive thing. And it lets you dream as well. The reason that lottery tickets exist is not necessarily because people think they can win. It's because it gives people the chance to dream. It gives you like you go out and you spend $1 on a lottery ticket, and for the rest of that day, you can dream about what your life would be like if you won, and that's worth $1 to you. Like that. That's why people do it. And so I think that's kind of the binary answer on this. On one hand, people have always been gamblers, but there is also a sense among young people that the paths that were available to them, the opportunities that used to be available to them, don't exist anymore. I actually don't think that's the case. I think you can still build a good, honest, high income career today in some ways with more opportunity and easier than it was in the past in some ways. But that feeling is not out there. And that's the cause of a lot of the gambling mentality that we have these days.
Yeah, and I think you made a very good point that I didn't take into consideration, that this has always been the case. It's just now, obviously with social media and stuff, we're just getting bombarded with this. This trading strategy will make you 10,000. How to do this, how to do that, and it's just human nature. And I think the point you made, that's so important, that when you have no options, you're like, all right, let's do it. Let's give it a chance. I've got literally nothing else to lose. I've lost it all. And building on your point about the youth not looking at traditional, I guess, careers as pathways to build financial freedom and success nowadays. I was literally having this conversation 2 hours ago, and you mentioned it earlier in the conversation, that back in the day, you could have a household, a guy who works at a factory, can take care of his wife and kids, have a good middle class life, and that now you can still, the fact that you can still do that but don't want that is the big change that has happened, in society and our expectations to what you're talking about. But do you think, honestly, we were having this conversation today, a friend of mine, do you think right now it's easier to make money, or is it harder? Because from my perspective, I'm like, back in the day, you didn't have access to the internet, you didn't have access to AI, you didn't have access to so many technologies now that can do a lot of work for you. But at the same time, the population of the world has doubled or tripled since that time. So you also have a billion more people to compete with in this space too. So what are your thoughts? New school, old school? Is it easier or harder? What's your take?
One of the big issues in economics is that you can never summarize big questions like that into a single answer, because
Sure.
there's 7 billion people competing here, and so if you are a tech worker in the United States, it's the best time ever to be alive. If you are a factory worker, in some other country or some other part of the United States, it's nothing like it used to be. It's much worse now than it used to be. And so I think this is why we have so many economic debates, is because if I say something broad and sweeping, like it's easier now to make money than it's ever been, that might be true for some people. And it might be completely blasphemy for other people. It might be the most absurd statement ever for other people. And then we're like,
Great
oh,
point.
you idiot, why are you doing this? And so I think the unappealing answer to your question is it depends. And nobody wants to hear that, but it's the truth. It's true that there are a million new opportunities today to make a very good income that didn't exist 5 or 10 years ago. If you went back 15 years ago and you talked about podcasters making a ton of money, or people who write finance books, selling millions of copies. That was absurd. That didn't exist. And you can imagine if you went back 30 years ago and you started talking about, having a career in cybersecurity or DNA sequencing, or like all these things that are great careers now that didn't exist 30 years ago, it would have seemed the same. So there are more opportunities. And because the world is connected, the world is now your audience. So when something works, it really, really works. Because it used to be that the audience for your products were by and large the people who lived in your town. It was just very smaller. Where now, if you're doing things online, the audience for your products are billions and billions of people. And so you have
Absolutely.
this more winner take all mentality. You saw this just this year when Facebook, Meta, was literally offering employees $1 billion to come build AI models. To a single person, $1 billion in pay, in salary to come build these models. And the reason why they were doing that, A, it might be crazy, it might be a bubble, but B, is because the potential for an AI model when the customer base is the 8 billion people who live on Earth is so astronomical that you can have literally a single person who can generate $1 billion of value for a company. So it might not be crazy to pay people that much. That was completely absurd 20 years ago, to say nothing of 50 or 100 years ago, that one person could add that much value, but it does exist today. And so there are more opportunities. The rewards for those opportunities can be absolutely astronomical, but you are competing with more people. And even if the world is way better for 40% of people, I'm making that up, but let's just say that it's the case that for 40% of people, it's a way better economic world today than it's ever been. The other 60% are going to very loudly and very understandably look at that and stomp their feet. And so that's why you have so many economic debates.
Yeah, and I think the point you made about you can't simplify that question into a simple, it's a simple answer. There's so many layers. I think the points you made about the context is very important. Like our job, like a podcaster's job didn't even exist 15 years ago, and like all these different industries. And now obviously with AI coming into the picture, I'm not going to dive into the AI conversation. I think I'm AI'd out by now. It's here to stay, guys. Figure it out, make some money. Good luck. That's my take on AI. But one of the things you talked about there is context, right? And what I've learned, Morgan, over the last couple of years is when it comes to learning finance and learning these habits and building like all this, I spoke to someone recently who said, Khaled, finance is hard to learn because it's gate kept. And something you said on the podcast, which was very interesting to me, was you want to have some information, some financial information, but not too much that it makes you bored. And you don't want to have too much because that's going to cripple you. And I was sitting there and I'm like, that sounds counterintuitive. You know what I'm saying? Like I thought the more I know and the deeper I get the markets and the blips and the charts and all that, the better chance I will have. But apparently, according to you, that might not necessarily be the case.
I mean, I'll give you one example of this. It used to be that when you were looking at the weather forecast, you opened up the newspaper and it said, on Tuesday, it's going to be partly cloudy. And that was all you knew. That was the only information that you had. And now on our Apple app, on the weather app, you can literally go minute by minute and be like, okay, at 9:52, there's an 82% chance that it's going to start raining, but then it's going to stop at 9:57, and then there's a 67%. You can get so detailed.
That's so true.
And it's important to ask, like, which were you better informed at? I think a lot of people were much calmer about the weather and probably had a better grasp on what they should wear that day. All they knew was it's partly cloudy and the high is going to be 52. Now, if that's all you knew, that was all the information that you needed. And all the information on top of that was just driving you crazy, but you weren't making better decisions. You weren't changing your wardrobe or bringing an extra umbrella because you had all of this extra granular information. It just drove you crazy. And I think that's true for finance as well. That, I don't pay attention to the vast majority of free financial information that is out there. You can get the most granular detail on every public company, their change in cash and what their margins have done in the last quarter for different product lines. None of that matters to me at all as an investor, and it would drive me crazy if I paid attention to it. All that I need to know as an investor is I own a very diversified portfolio. It's low cost, and I believe in capitalism. And so I believe that over the next 20 or 30 years, those companies are going to provide value, become more efficient, and all that value is going to accrue to me. That's the information that I have, and that's all the information that I know. And the more information that I have on top of that is going to drive me crazy. And so we are lucky to live in an era where there is a lot of free information out there on the state of the economy and the state of investing markets. It's good. It's much better than having no information. But I think we are well beyond the point of having so much information that the average person can just become overwhelmed. And a lot of financial firms, I think, have not done a good job at this because they want their trading app that you trade stocks on, they want the customer to feel like they are super smart and informed and intelligent. So they bombard you with information and they color code it, flashing red, flashing green. So you look at it and you're like, man, like I'm smart, like I'm doing some fancy stuff here. And I think by and large, it just leads to worse behavior. It gives the illusion of control, the illusion of being more informed when you're just adding on a bunch of granular data that is not actually going to lead you to make better decisions over time.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head there, man. The illusion of control. I think that sums up exactly what you're talking about. And I love the weather forecast example because, I don't just tell me it's like 25 outside. I don't care what the humidity is, the precipitation. I don't need to know all of that.
I mean, to the point. I think like a really good weather forecast is if it just said jacket or no jacket. That's all you need.
Yeah.
Don't give me any other information.
Glasses,
just
no
give
glasses.
me
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. And I feel like that's how I
Yeah.
invest. I'm like,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
capitalism going to work or is it not? And as long as I believe it's going to work, that's all that I need to know.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. So to your point that there's so much information out there and we're getting bombarded. We got the flashing screens, we got information. What I guess from your experience as, an investor, as an author in the finance space is learning to block out the noise and knowing what or who to listen to or pay attention to. So if I came to you, like, Morgan, man, I'm just getting, this guy says do this trading strategy, this guy says that guy says the market's going to go down, up, and I know we can't predict it, and I know it's all to, crave these things because we want to have, to your point, more control over the financial decision we're about to make. But there's so much noise. So from your experience and what you would advise people, how do I block that out and learn what or who to listen to?
I think you have to define what your goals are and what game you're playing. And here's the example that I would use. Let's say you want to be a marathon runner. And to be a marathon runner, you need to be skinny and thin and not a ton of muscle mass. You need to be strong, but not a ton of muscle mass. You need to be like, lanky. And that's what's going to make you a great runner. And so you're doing that and you're really successful. And then a bodybuilder walks up to you and he's like, no, man, you're in terrible shape. You need to bulk up. You need to work out. You need to get huge and big. And if you're a marathon runner, you're like, no, that's the game you're playing. That's not the game I'm playing. For the game I'm playing, this skinny little body is perfect for me. And the bodybuilder isn't wrong. The football player who wants to be huge is right for his game. It's not right for the marathon runner. People understand that with that example, but the exact same thing happens with money and finance. And so there are so many, I'm not a day trader. I'm a long-term index fund investor. But if a day trader comes up to me and says, Morgan, you need to sell Microsoft stock before tomorrow because it just passed the 200-day moving average and it's going to, and I'd be like, look, for you, that's right. For me, it's complete nonsense. And I don't judge you. You're just playing a different game. You're playing basketball. I'm playing baseball. To each their own. We're all happy here. And then in that world, you naturally only start paying attention to people who are playing the same game that you are. And so there are a small number of people, commentators, writers, friends of mine, who I think are playing a very similar game to me. And I pay close attention to what they're saying and what they're writing and what they're doing and the advice that they have. There are millions of people out there who are playing a very different financial game than I do. And when they put out a forecast that says sell stocks because there's going to be a recession next quarter, I pay no attention whatsoever. Not because I don't think they're right, just because it's totally different from what I'm doing. And I think most people cannot actually define the game that they're playing. They haven't gone out of their way to be like, what is a financial, like, what are my actual goals here that I'm trying to achieve? Let me define that. And if I haven't defined that, how in the world do I know where to seek information? And so going out of your way to like write it down in no more than like a paragraph. What am I trying to do here? I'm trying to earn this much money from this strategy. And here's why I want to earn that much money. And like that's the game that you're playing. And then circle yourself with people who are playing that game and ignore everybody else.
Man, you hit the nail on the head. I love how you said it's your game. I'm playing this game. I understand. Thank you for the advice. But, I have my own approach, my own belief, my own thing that I want to do. And this kind of hits on so many things we talked about in the conversation about being influenced by others, about not having a direction. And I think one of the biggest challenges when it comes to managing money is the point you just said. We don't have goals. I said it earlier in the conversation. I want to make more. Okay. Why? What's that number? How are you going to get there? Zero answer to that. And that's not just me. I think there's millions of people that are just chasing, I want more, but to what? Where's that end goal? Because I believe if you don't have that end goal, to your point, I can't work backwards and figure out, should I buy this thing or should I save it? Or should I invest in that or should I not? Because I don't know where I'm going, right? So how do I, because people say set goals or whatever, I like to always give the how. So if you were going to explain what are the questions I need to ask myself to set those goals, what would they be from your perspective?
I think you need to spend a lot of time looking in the mirror, so to speak, to figure out who you are. And I think most people don't really understand who they are. Until you know who you are, you can't know what you want. And so it took me a long time to realize this, like how much I value independence, maybe more than most people. Like maybe I might value it more than you, but that's who I am. I just want to be independent. And so once I understood that about myself and that was kind of a unique trait of how much I wanted it, that could inform the goals that I wanted. I have other friends who are not like that at all. They couldn't care less about saving for independence. They have a very different personality. They're like, I need to be the greatest entrepreneur in this specific thing, whatever their goal might be. Great, you know that about yourself now. That's wonderful. Jeff Bezos talked about when he started Amazon in 1994, I think it was. He told himself, he said, if I try this and it fails, I won't regret it. But if I don't try it, I will regret it. And so that it was an easy decision to start it. And I love that framework. But I also, when I heard that, I was like, man, if I started a company and poured my life into it and my life savings and my parents' life savings and it failed, I would regret that. I would totally regret that. So look, that's not a criticism, but I'm like, look, Jeff Bezos realized that that's who he was. I realized that that is not who I am. So I need to have very different goals and strategies and lifestyle than he does. Just going out of your way to truly understand what you want and what your personality is and what your risk tolerance is so critical to doing that. The other thing that's important is that who you are changes throughout the course of your life. I am a very different person today than I was 10 years ago. I will be a different person 20 years from now. And so you can't just say, this is who I am, latch onto that and assume that's who, and just like hold on to like, that's your identity. Your identity is going to change throughout the course of your life. There'll be some things that are stable over time, but I have different values. I have different traits. I have different behaviors today than I did 10 or 15 years ago. And so always being honest and fluid in those beliefs too. You want to have strong beliefs weakly held, as the saying goes. Like I really believe this and I really want this, but look, 10 years ago, I was not a parent. 20 years from now, I might be a grandparent. I shouldn't pretend that I'm going to be the same person throughout those phases. And so always like not only looking in the mirror to figure out who you are, but constantly doing it and constantly trying to update those beliefs as you get smarter.
No, 100%, man. You you hit the nail on the head from the identity perspective. And as you change, you're not the same person you were 10 years ago. I'm not the same, definitely not the same person I was 10 years ago. Thank God. Right. And how that adjusts, as you go on through life, and that also will dictate how you approach money, how you think about finance, how you make those decisions. Now, for example, you have children, so you're going to look at things very differently when it comes to finances. I wanted to round off our conversation today, Morgan, with this question, because it's a bit of a, how do I say this? It's a bit of a not sad, but it's a bit of a sad reality, but it is the truth. And you touched on it right at the beginning of the conversation, is that there's no formula to this, to all of this. It's art, it's life, but you, in order to create your own formula, play your own game, set your own rules or targets, you have to also be an active player. I can, no matter how much I sit and just look at finance or read about finance, that doesn't mean I'm going to become more financially literate. I'm going to make better financial decisions. I have to be an active player in the game to create my own art or my own path for that. And I think, unfortunately, I'm not going to say like I'm anything special or whatever. As humans, we want that path. Show me, Morgan. Show me, how do I get there? Okay, walk 10,000 steps, Khaled, then you will get there. And then you turn left. But that's not the case, is it?
It's not the case. I think if there is a formula for a pretty nice life, not a perfect life, but a pretty nice life, if I did try to instill it in a formula, it's independence plus purpose. And I think it's hard for anyone to have a really enjoyable life without both of those things. You need the independence to be who you are and do your own thing and not be beholden to other people's goals and other people's ideas. And you need a purpose that is driving you to do that. Purpose can be anything from family to religion to legacy to helping out the community. Whatever that purpose might be, different for everybody. But I try to think about that in my own life. Do I have independence over what I'm doing? And do I have a purpose that I'm striving for? And I think if you have both of those things at the same time, and you're working towards those things, and you realize that those should be, at least in my view, the North Star that you're trying to achieve. Independence plus purpose. That's everything I do. That's what I want. I think that's the closest that you can get. Neither of those things are easy. Yeah. Both of those things require a lot of work. Both of them will be constantly peppered by doubt and uncertainty. But I think if you have those as a North Star that you are chasing every morning and every day that you go by, I think that's a pretty good high-end formula for a nice life that I keep in mind for myself.
No, I think I agree with that, man. I think you said the equation of a good life was intention plus purpose. And to your point, something that's very important to you is your independence. What I've really appreciate and what I've learned from you in this conversation, Morgan, is that you are seen as one of the top financial experts in the world. But when I talk to you and we have our conversation, it's never about, oh, Khaled, make this financial decision. It's been always about the person you want to be, not only to yourself, to your audience, to your children. It's a different mindset. And I think we all are very used to chasing the money because it's easy and it's there, instead of chasing the people or the person that we want to be. So let's say we're now 20 years in the future. You have your grandkids, I hope. You have the grandkids, you're sitting down, and you're going to look back. How would you measure the impact you've had on the world?
I think for me personally, it's how, and I think the vast majority of parents can relate to this. It's have I raised kids who are going to be good adults? Now, I say adults because a lot of parents say, I want to raise good kids. And I heard this phrase a couple of years ago and I really liked it. It's like, no. You don't want to raise good kids. You want to raise good adults. You want to raise them when they're kids to prepare for them to be good, confident, self-sufficient, happy adults. And look, so much of your children's life is outside of your control. They're going to make their own decisions and be their own people. But it's hard for me, and I think the vast majority of parents, to imagine looking back at life and saying, I did a good job and I'm proud of what I accomplished if your kids are not doing well. And so I think that would be a big part of looking back and judging myself of how well I've done, is whether, not that I raised good kids, but that I raised good adults.
Man, what a beautiful, beautiful way, to end, to round off our podcast for today, my man. I want to say, I really resonate with that message. It's something that I've heard many, many times from guests I've interviewed on the show. It seems to be all about kids. I don't have kids yet, but we'll catch up, in the future. We'll have another financial conversation about this. I just wanted to say from a personal level, Morgan, thank you so much for joining us on the Not Just Money podcast. This has been an absolute pleasure for me. It's been an honor. I've been a big fan of yours for many, many years. Your book has honestly changed my life. I reference it all the time to people. I'm like, have you read this book? Guys, go get it. And I just want to say thank you for providing the information or the necessary information about finance to the world in a way that we can take in and apply. And it's not a how-to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a lot deeper, and it's more about the person than the money. The money is the overarching thing, but underneath it, what I've learned from our conversation and from all the books you've written and I've read, it's more about being a good person than making a lot of money.
It's a tool to live a better life, but it shouldn't define who you are. This has been such a fun conversation. You're very good at what you do. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Morgan. I really, really appreciate that. Guys, to everyone listening, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we will see you on the next episode. Thank you guys for joining us on another episode of the Not Just Money podcast. If you haven't already, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on socials to continue watching the industry leader talk about the mindset, tools, strategies, and share the money truths that no one teaches you. And remember, guys, when it comes to money, it's not about flex. It's about freedom.